Picture this, December 3rd, 2001. Buenos Aires, it's not a war zone, it's a weekday. But you're standing outside a bank behind a line of people who look like they haven't slept because they haven't. The doors are locked, the cash machine is empty, and the government has just told you the money you thought was yours is. They call it the corralito, the little corral, a polite name for something violent, a withdrawal freeze. If you had dollars in the bank, you didn't have dollars anymore, you had a promise. And then you had a new peso amount chosen by decree. Now zoom out, because Argentina isn't a one-off tragedy, it's a pattern. When countries try to quit the dollar, ban it, squeeze it, replace it, shame it, what follows is not liberation. It's usually the same sequence: capital flight, bank runs, black markets, and a currency that collapses faster than the official narrative can be rewritten. And here's the thesis. De-dollarization doesn't fail because the dollar is magical. It fails because the dollar is a lie detector and governments hate what it reveals. The mainstream story says ditch the dollar and you regain sovereignty. The historical record says something colder. When a country tries to force dollars out of the system without fixing the fiscal and monetary plumbing underneath, the economy convulses. In this documentary, you're going to see 5 countries, across different continents and decades, that attempted to escape dollar dependence through pegs, bans, forced conversions, and financial repression. By the end, you'll know the exact mechanisms that turn de-dollarization into a crisis, the warning signs that show up before the headlines, and the brutal reasons citizens end up dollarizing anyway, often illegally, because it's the only way to keep savings from being vaporized. Let's do financial forensics. Quick pause. If you like economic history that doesn't recite press releases, subscribe. This is where real-world balance sheets meet historical receipts. No hero worship, no trust the system, just the pattern and how to spot it before it spots you. Now let's talk about what actually happens when a government declares war on the dollar. Before we go country by country, define the move. Quitting dollars usually isn't a formal resignation letter sent to the Federal Reserve. It's one or more of these actions: breaking a dollar peg or a dollar-based monetary regime, forcing conversion of dollar deposits into local currency, banning domestic dollar transactions or punishing them with taxes and enforcement, creating a fake substitute, a new local currency unit, while the economy still needs dollars for imports and debt, or replacing dollar funding with opaque swaps, controls, and accounting tricks. And here's the core mechanism that keeps showing up. When residents don't trust the local currency, they hold dollars. When the state can't earn enough dollars through exports and investment inflows, it tries to confiscate, ration, or criminalize dollars domestically. That triggers a credibility collapse. People sprint for the exits, banks seize up, the black market becomes the real market. Country number 1, Argentina, 2001 to 2002. Argentina tried to escape a dollar-anchored regime by breaking its one-to-one convertibility system and forcibly converting contracts and deposits. In April 1991, Economy Minister Domingo Cavallo launched the convertibility plan, fixing the peso at 1 peso per US dollar. It crushed inflation and restored basic price signals. But the plan came with a hidden poison. It encouraged dollarized balance sheets. People saved in dollars, firms borrowed in dollars, banks intermediated in dollars. And the government accumulated debts it could only service under tight credibility. Then reality hit: external shocks, a strong dollar, competitiveness erosion, chronic fiscal weakness. By 1998, Argentina was in recession. By 2001, the financing window slammed shut. On December 3, 2001, the government imposed the corralito, strict limits on bank withdrawals. That's not a technical adjustment. That's a public admission that the banking system can't meet demand. Within weeks, Argentina defaulted on roughly $95 billion in public debt, one of the largest sovereign defaults in history at the time. In January 2002, the peg was abandoned, and the state began converting dollar contracts into pesos at official rates, what Argentines remember as pesification. This is where the quit the dollar fantasy collides with math. If your liabilities are in dollars and your income is in pesos, a devaluation detonates balance sheets, so governments do something worse. They force conversion. That transfers wealth quietly, legally from savers to the state and politically connected debtors. The results weren't abstract. Real GDP fell about 11% in 2002. Unemployment surged above 20%. The peso fell from parity to 3 or 4 per dollar in a single year. Socially, you got street unrest, political collapse, and the kind of institutional scarring that teaches citizens a lifelong lesson. Your bank balance is political property. Argentina didn't quit dollars cleanly. It promised a hard anchor without hard fiscal discipline. It let the economy dollarize liabilities. And when reserves and confidence ran out, it used coercion. The crisis wasn't caused by too much dollar. It was caused by too little credibility, and then the state made credibility illegal. When you hear "will de-dollarize," ask one question. Are they building trust or building controls? Now to a country that tried to de-dollarize by inventing a substitute dollar without admitting it. Zimbabwe, 2016 to 2020. After abandoning its own currency and adopting dollars, Zimbabwe tried to recreate monetary sovereignty by introducing quasi-currencies and eventually banning foreign currencies, then reversed course after inflation surged. Zimbabwe's hyperinflation in the 2000s became a global symbol. By late 2008, inflation estimates reached levels so extreme they broke normal statistics. In 2009, Zimbabwe effectively dollarized because the Zimbabwe dollar had lost the basic ability to price bread. Dollarization stabilized prices. But it also removed the government's favorite tool, printing. In 2016, the Reserve Bank introduced bond notes, presented as an export incentive and supposedly pegged one-to-one to the US dollar. Here's the problem: if something is truly one-to-one, you don't need speeches to enforce it. The market enforces it automatically. Bond notes traded at a discount. Then the discount widened. In 2019, Zimbabwe introduced new local units and then banned foreign currencies for domestic transactions. That's quitting dollars in its most literal form. You can't use them even if everyone wants to. Once you force people into a currency they don't trust, they do what humans always do: they hoard the good money, they spend the bad money. And they create a parallel market if necessary. Inflation reaccelerated into triple digits. Exchange rates split. And then policy reversed in pieces, quietly acknowledging that a ban doesn't create confidence, it creates shortages and corruption. Once a society learns the lesson of inflation, the demand for dollars becomes cultural memory. You don't erase it with a regulation. Next, a country that tried to quit dollars through a control regime so complex it became its own industry. Venezuela, 2003 to 2021. Venezuela attempted to suppress dollar use through strict exchange controls, multiple official exchange rates, and financial repression, then ended up with widespread informal dollarization anyway. In 2003, exchange controls were introduced to manage capital flight. On paper, it was about stability. In practice, it created an official rate chosen by politics and a black market rate chosen by reality. Once you create multiple exchange rates, you create a machine for corruption. Over time, importers couldn't plan, shortages appeared, smuggling and arbitrage became profitable industries. The state lost legitimacy because everyone knew the official rate was fiction. As oil revenues weakened and deficits were monetized, inflation exploded. By 2018, estimates reached extreme 6 to 7-digit percent levels. Venezuela redenominated its currency, removing 11 zeros in a few years. But removing zeros doesn't remove the cause. By 2019, the dollar won anyway. Daily commerce became dollarized because people needed a functioning medium of exchange. The state oscillated between crackdowns, tolerance, and taxes, trying to rent-seek from the public's escape route. Exchange controls are not a shield, they're a confession. Now to a country that ran out of dollars inside the banking system. Lebanon, 2019 to 2023. Lebanon maintained a long-standing dollar peg and a heavily dollarized banking system. Deposits were in dollars, prices were in dollars. The financial sector depended on continuous inflows, but if the system needs constant new dollars to pay old promises, that's not stability. That's fragility. In 2016, financial engineering created the appearance of calm. In reality, it hollowed out liquidity. By 2019, confidence broke. Banks restricted withdrawals. You had a dollar in your account, but you couldn't take it out as a dollar. Locals called them lollars. In March 2020, the sovereign defaulted. The currency collapsed on the parallel market. Inflation surged, purchasing power imploded. Lebanon didn't choose to quit dollars. It was forced into de-dollarization by restriction. When a banking system is the country's dollar supply, a loss of confidence is a loss of currency. Finally, a country that fought dollarization rhetorically while policy quietly pushed citizens into it. Turkey, 2018 to 2023. Turkey urged citizens to sell dollars and support the lira. Patriotism was offered as a substitute for credibility. But currency crises don't respond to slogans. They respond to inflation expectations, reserves, debt rollover, and policy credibility. Turkey pursued low rates despite rising inflation. Markets priced the opposite. The lira fell in waves. Inflation hit 85% year-on-year in late 2022. The response was financial engineering. FX-protected deposits that delayed panic by shifting risk onto the public balance sheet. The result was ironic. The more leadership talked about escaping the dollar, the more households sought protection from the lira, through foreign currency, gold, offshore vehicles, or anything less politically editable. De-dollarization is not declared. It's earned. Here's the brutal truth. The dollar is not the cause of these crises, it's the thermometer. Smashing the thermometer doesn't cure the fever. Across these cases, the pattern is clear. When governments try to force the outcome without fixing the cause, fiscal discipline, credible institutions, real reserves, the result is consistent. Savings are destroyed, trust evaporates, and control is lost anyway. Watch the warning signs: high inflation with negative real rates, large current account deficits, short-term external debt rivaling reserves, multiple exchange rates, quiet capital controls, leaders blaming speculators while refusing reform. When a government starts treating dollars as contraband, it's telling you something. It can't earn them and it can't borrow them cheaply anymore. So don't watch speeches, watch balance sheets. Because the only question is whether a crisis is coming. It's whether you'll be standing outside the bank or whether you already understood why the doors were going to lock.